Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis, a podcast dedicated to the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. What's going on, everybody? It's Wednesday, and we didn't really think we were going to do an episode tonight, but we listened in on Brandon and Melanie's custody trial, which really wasn't a trial, but it was slated to be a trial. And so we just knew with Fruit Loop leaving Friday, we had to jump on here and talk about all this.
Yeah, put your seatbelt on.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, it's a little bumpy.
So last night, Justin Lum posted their pretrial documents, which is sort of a summary of their main points. And there were so many little hints in that paperwork. We're going to break it down tonight.
Yep.
You texted me. I didn't know they had been put up yet. And then about 5 minutes later, he posted Melanie's, which they're so different right out of the gate.
Yeah, I thought like Brandon's has got a ton of evidence and things that are going on in other cases as well.
Right.
And then hers was more like child stuff. Like, yeah, it was totally
a lot
different.
of denial.
Yeah.
And saving face, I guess. So we're going to just break it down now because there is a lot to go through between those documents and then also what was said today in court. They both got on the stand, so we're going to jump in right now.
Yeah. So Brandon, he was during his cross-examination when I don't know Melanie's attorney. I don't know his name. I know his is like Crider, right, or something.
Something like that. I didn't catch the names either.
I can't remember her attorney, but so Brandon, he just made me laugh because he'd be like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
So Melanie Pulowski joined Lori, Chad, and Alex in Rexburg to form a cult.
Now, this is what's coming from Brandon's documents.
Yeah.
So these are the things that he submitted to court that would hopefully influence in a positive way his ability to retain full custody and all that stuff.
Yeah. So she joined them in Rexburg. She abandoned her kids and refused to give Brandon an address. I thought it was weird when, and I know we'll talk about all this, but she states later on, just a few minutes ago, that she didn't give him an address because he had a private investigator following her. She didn't feel comfortable. And I'm like, girl, you know he's going to find where you're living.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does she know how they work?
Yeah.
Does she know why you pay them?
Yeah, he's supposed to follow you. Little did she know he had a GPS tracker on her little U-Haul. So
right. So then Melanie Pulowski, according to Brandon, had told a friend that the Lord came to her and told her, if you don't go to this emergency hearing in December of last year, things will work out better. She just never showed up.
Yeah.
And this is somebody who apparently, according to her, really wants to see her kids.
Yeah, she had seen how things in court work out. And if you remember, she was probably through a lot of court stuff with her parents.
Yeah, and I thought some of the language in there, it was definitely put in for maximum effect. For example, Brandon puts in there that the cult was accused of violently murdering Tylee, J.J. Charles, and possibly two other individuals, which I assume is Joseph Ryan and Tammy Daybell.
Yep. And then he explained the zombie theory that we know has come out of all this. He says she's suffering from she has mental health issues.
Yeah, he's accused her of that. That was sort of brought up today. It seems like maybe he didn't start the mental health stuff maybe until like July of this year, sort of what I gathered. Sometimes it was hard to hear on the phone call that we dialed into to listen.
But I think his attorney, when he was cross-examining her, he asked her that question, and then he brought up another document where Brandon had said it before. Mm-hmm. So he caught Melanie in a lie.
Oh.
Because she had said he didn't bring it up until July, and then the attorney goes, but wait, here's a document here that it was brought up sooner than that, or before July.
Yeah.
So it kind of showed she wasn't telling the truth there. So I thought that was interesting.
One thing that Brandon had put in his documents was that I don't know if it's sort of in defense of her beliefs or what he was accusing her of believing. Brandon said that essentially Melanie accused his religion as being just as harmful.
Yeah. And I mean, he hasn't killed his kids or.
Right. He's definitely had a lot on his plate. It's not every
Yeah.
day you find out your spouse is involved in a cult. And, you know, after it was about December, this starts hitting mainstream media and she's on national and worldwide news. This isn't a typical situation.
Exactly.
And the other thing, one of the little gems that was sort of tucked in there is it says 2 children, Charles Vallow and believably Tammy Daybell, were all murdered by members of the sinister cult. So we've sort of wondered for a while. Tammy was exhumed almost a year ago, last December. We were told they should have had results back. Initially, they did say a whole year. We're coming up on that. But there were times where they said, 4 to 6 weeks, that sort of thing. And we've heard nothing since this case was moved up to the Attorney General. This was the first time that somebody involved in all of this, whether remotely or directly, has said it's believable that this cult, essentially Chad, may be responsible for her death. And it's a no-brainer, but hasn't been said much.
No, And there were just little things they dropped, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, because you sent it to me, and I responded back in text, and then before I know it, like, there's your picture on my phone. You were calling.
Yeah.
Because we're like, whoa, did you catch that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. So, I mean, there was an attempt on his life. Does she know she's like with her uncle who made that attempt? Like, that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's Brandon's whole point.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but if somebody tried to kill somebody, I would be like, you better go on.
Right, exactly.
Nope.
But it does say in there, the one thing we caught was it doesn't name Melanie as this shooter. It actually names Alex.
Yep.
Which is something we really haven't had confirmed yet. We assumed. But then there was a little question because she was in the Air Force. She was a sharpshooter or a marksman or whatever you call it. So it maybe wasn't a reach to think she could have pulled the trigger. But it indicated that she knew about the plot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, what? It's just crazy stuff. So what do you got next?
Melanie Pulowski Brandon says Melanie never expressed any concern over Tylee and JJ being missing.
Yeah, that's the other thing I can't, and we've talked about it before on here. Like, you never saw them?
Yeah. And last podcast, I said something that I think maybe could have been misconstrued, which is I think Melanie's naive. I didn't really mean that she didn't know anything about any of this stuff. But
she's just kind of gullible.
Right. But after a while, you have to sort of wonder, especially after the cops come knocking, at no point she ever just sat down and said, where are these kids?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. Or have you talked to them? I mean, we don't know privately. I mean, what was said, we don't know if Melanie ultimately knew what happened to the kids. I mean, that remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But we're operating under the assumption that maybe she didn't actually know they were dead.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting that Melanie used Lori's mom as what they call a collateral witness in the psychiatric evaluation that they had done for this case.
Yeah. And knowing that she lied and stuff on TV.
Right. What did she lie about?
She said that she had talked to JJ on the phone, that he was fine or whatever. She had talked to him.
Right. Although I've always sort of wondered, and I've said this before, Alex was really good at impressions. And I thought, is it possible that maybe just to keep everybody off their trail, could Alex have impersonated JJ's voice? I don't know. It's just sort of a little thing
it's a little small theory.
Yeah, it's a little theory.
Yep. So then he mentions that Melanie accuses him of being gay, and we've heard all that. I think he's actually got some defamation of character lawsuits against her attorneys, I think.
Yeah, they put out it was really unprofessional in my opinion. It
Yep.
was just an attack statement
Yep.
that her attorney put out that was just, they've never validated any of their claims in it. So Brandon's suing the attorney. Good for him, because a lot of that was, from what we know, just these conspiracy theories that
Yeah.
have never been proven or even remotely looked at as true regarding Brandon.
Yeah. So then she says, and this is what Brandon's saying, that she said her reason for moving to Idaho was to be closer to her family. And I mean, the only family she had was Lori and Alex.
Yeah, and the kids, but I mean,
it was Miles. They were in Utah. And that was when he had taken them, and
right. Melanie's kids were in Utah, I believe, with
his parents.
But if you remember, somebody said there was a network of people that would take care of them. Like, I don't think he settled in one place, especially until Alex died.
Yeah.
If you remember, where was it? Some interview or something.
Yeah, it was. It was. There was an interview with a lady, and she had helped hide them.
Right. Which, if you look at this from Brandon's perspective, when all of this is going down, nobody's been arrested. The kids are still missing. He knows at this point probably that Alex took the shot at him, and Alex is living in Arizona where he lives.
Yeah, and I mean,
in December at least.
Yeah, and there was some comments made that Melanie was the only one that knew where he lived. Melanie Pulowski was the only one that knew because he had moved.
He'd only been there a week.
Yeah, and she was the only one that knew where he lived.
Right.
So this is the second time we've heard. I thought about this earlier today. The other time that Alex does something stupid is when Lori is meeting Joe to drop off Tylee. Remember? And the attorney said nobody knew until the night before where that meeting place was.
Mm-hmm.
So that went off in my brain when she said, when he said nobody knew.
And it's not like Alex was just across town. As far as we know, he was possibly in Arizona. Yeah. So he had to go from Arizona to Texas for that meeting where he ultimately tased Joe Ryan.
Exactly. So.
Yeah.
Yep. So
the other thing, though, Fruit Loop today that I caught was her attorney, when questioning Brandon about Melanie was the only one that knew where he was at the time for that week. The attorney said, "Oh, did you have somebody help you?" And I can't remember the name. Did so-and-so help you move into that house? So technically, Mary. Who is Mary? I'm in a food coma, y'all. We just had some chili. Yeah. That Melanie, her attorney says, yeah, but people helped you move in. So technically she wasn't the only one that knew where you lived. And I just sort of shook my head and thought, yeah, his buddies who helped him move in and get him settled in the midst of this chaos took a shot at him. Come on.
And I want to say he said Chance and maybe a nephew or something. It was something. So yeah.
It was some names.
Yeah, he was grasping at straws.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And I think the great point because she said she was moving to Boise. Mm-hmm. Why not just say, if you're afraid of him finding out where you're moving to, why don't just say Idaho? That doesn't narrow anything down. Why say Boise?
Right.
But then again, I think if you're still wanting to have contact with your kids, he has to know where you live.
At some point. And she put forth to the court today as if, I bought that apartment for me and my kids, but she didn't even show up for the December hearing where she could have made moves to be with her kids. Yeah. At this point, though, what was the date? It was in December. So at this point, everybody's married off. Chad and Lori's been to Hawaii. Maybe Alex is dead at this point.
Yeah, I want the 19th comes to my brain, but I
think you're right. It is the 19th. So, I mean, if you look at that, it kind of doesn't make sense at that point, because I'm sure she knew eventually she would be going back to Arizona. But still, if you are in a fight for custody of your kids, you show up at every hearing, whether you have to walk there or fly there.
Yeah. And she didn't move back. And we found this out today. She didn't move back till January of 2020.
Yeah.
That was when she moved back to Arizona. Mm-hmm. Yep. So technically, she was in Idaho by herself.
Well, she had Ian, I guess.
Yeah, Ian was. It was just him.
But it was just the two of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then he talks about Melanie asked Ian not to tell his ex-wife her last name to keep Brandon from knowing where she was. So this is just crazy. Again, if you want to see your kids, that's what I mean. It doesn't make any sense.
And also, if you have nothing to hide, there's no reason you would want his ex to know your last name. They're married.
Okay, so exactly. So Brandon's attorney brings up and he asked Melanie, so would you want your kids being around Alex Cox,
Yeah.
Chad Daybell, and Lori Daybell?
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of like crickets at first.
Yeah.
And then she said no.
Well, but a couple of times today, she did bring up the point that according to her, had she known what was going on behind the scenes, the things that supposedly she didn't know about, she would have done things very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So I'm gonna tell you another point. And he brings it up, like in all of his paperwork, he brings up her post on Facebook about Tylee after they find, them deceased or murdered and they find the bodies. She makes that whole post about Tylee, I don't know, whatever.
She says, I wish she were here to clear up the confusion for us. And then there was the comment that was just so off, which was if Tylee were here, she would roll her eyes at the media attention, essentially.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And that was brought up in the affidavit that Brandon submitted.
Yeah. And so if you claim to know her that well and you haven't seen her since the 2 months you've lived there, come on.
Yeah. It's at that point, I could see a week. Okay. Maybe they're doing something, but 2 months later and you're not getting suspicious.
Nope.
Either you're not smart or you know something and you don't need to ask.
Exactly. So you had some financials on Melanie Pulowski, right?
Well, it was alleged that, according to Brandon, she has spent more than $100,000 since July of 2019, and there's $70,000 missing from her financial declarations. Apparently, at the end of the divorce, they must have made a financial settlement on marital assets, which would be maybe like a retirement fund or stocks or whatever. Sometimes you have to sell that stuff off and split it 50-50. So it seems like she got $70,000 that she was awarded at the end of the divorce. And Brandon attributed that missing money to her being paranoid and moving money around.
Yeah, and I think it said something about funding Cox's stuff and the cult stuff.
Yeah, it says in there that she was funding Alex Cox as well as other members of the cult, which was news to us because I sort of assumed that they were living off, what Lori was getting the government money for the kids.
Yep.
Which probably wasn't a tiny amount, but I guess if you look at their lifestyle, it was. So that was sort of a clue now, maybe as to Melanie's importance in this cult. I don't think they brought her in for her brains.
Yeah.
So maybe they were using Melanie for the money. Brandon, at one point, apparently he didn't work last year. All this would be a good reason as to why you may have to take a little bit of a vacation.
Yeah.
But it did come out today that Brandon admitted to making about $15,000 a month. And I'm sure he's smart with retirement and things like that. Yeah. So until that divorce is finalized, technically she has access to that money. So I could see even when they were married, how she was able to maybe kind of fund some of the travel, or maybe it'll come out at trial and it could be one of the townhouses. Maybe she was paying for Alex's townhouse. It specifically said she was keeping him up.
Yep.
So that was something else that we learned.
Yeah. And we've discussed this before. She never distanced herself from Lori, Chad, and Alex.
No.
Like in her interviews, her multiple interviews she did, she always defended them.
That's right.
Yep.
And even at that point, the kids are missing. And so you're looking now at months and months and months of these kids being just vanished into thin air. And she's still defending them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's always been confusing to me. Why
Yeah.
would you defend somebody at this point when the national news, international news is covering this case? And she's saying, oh, they're okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's why I think, that's why I said the last podcast, is it just that she's gullible? I just don't see it being that gullible.
Yeah. And still talking about the finances, he says in there that the FBI is investigating financials of members of Melanie's family.
After all the stink her parents caused with the IRS, they are probably cracking their case back open.
Oh, with a fine-tooth comb.
Oh, man. Lori's going to get everybody into pokey.
Yep.
All her family's going to be, except for me, Adam and his son, what is it, Zach?
Yeah.
Like, they've stayed out of it, but mom, dad, the niece, man.
Yeah.
They might have like a family reunion in cell block C.
Exactly. And you look at the interviews, and Brandon brings this up, that there's just conflicting statements in every interview she did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was never consistent.
No. And we did a podcast on that. Mm-hmm. The body language of both of them.
Yeah.
Her and Ian.
Right.
So he says in his Brandon, in his paperwork, what is it? His affidavit, right?
I guess that's what to call it.
It's made on paper. It's on paper. Well, it's on paper right here in front of me.
His statement.
Yeah, that Alex Cox murdered Charles and tried to murder Brandon.
Right.
Like he makes that statement. Mm-hmm. And you're right, he does say, like, his wording in there, and just everything, like he said about the kids, how they were buried and stuff.
It's just with a punch.
Yeah.
It's designed for impact.
Yeah. For
that judge to read it.
Yeah, I think at some point he says that they were tossed out like garbage, and just like everything. He's just, he's being truthful.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense as to what was agreed to today. We're going to get to that after we finish these documents.
Yeah, because we know y'all are like, what? Yeah, we did the same thing at first.
You're going to be like, are you not going to talk about the fact that they agreed to joint custody? Well, we have theories, and we'll get to those. And then the other thing was that Brandon mentioned was that he stated that Alex Cox was active in the plot to kill Tammy Daybell. So what does that tell you, Fruit Loop?
That Alex killed Tammy Daybell.
Yeah, I think what it says to us is that he's willing to put that on paper in a legal proceeding. So I think he knows more than we do. And if we know that Alex was active in the plot, notice it didn't say murdered like Charles Vallow. It says in the plot.
Active. I
think we're going to get some murder charges eventually for Chad, and maybe conspiracy for Lori.
And he says in his wording that he has evidence.
Right. And, we've always said the charges will come. We say that every podcast. But this is the first time where if Brandon's words are how he meant it on this affidavit, he directly ties Alex to planning Tammy Daybell's murder.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard anything yet other than they may have enough evidence, even without the autopsy, to continue with charges. And we have heard that Alex may have been connected in some way, but now we hear he was active in the plot.
Yep.
So we know there was a plot. So hopefully justice for Tammy will come sooner than later.
Yeah. And he also he says that Melanie Pulaski's not telling investigators everything she knows.
Yeah. And on top of that, Brandon said in the paper that he has submitted evidence to the court to show that Melanie had knowledge of felony acts. So that may be something we're just not going to learn until a trial later, or even if she gets arrested at some point for the attempt on his life. But to be able to submit knowledge, I'm interested to see what that is. I'm
going to tell you this. I'm just going to be straight up. We've been best friends forever.
Yes.
And we're like, all our family, we're just like family.
Yes.
You do something stupid, I ain't going to jail for you.
No,
I'll be the first one in line, hold my hand up. She did it.
I know, right?
I am not covering for you.
Yeah.
I ain't going to jail.
We've always said we would never do good in the pokey.
No.
I would be in the corner crying for my mama.
But what is Melanie doing? Just, oh my goodness. If she gets arrested, then she going to be telling everything.
I
She
think
going to be making deal after deal after deal.
I mean, could it be that? I don't know. I mean, we'll have to wait and see when she's arrested. I don't think it's an if, to be honest with you.
And I mean, it says here, Brandon has submitted evidence to show that Melanie Pulaski had knowledge of felonious, is it felon?
I just said felony in spite of that word because I knew I'd flub it.
It is a weird word.
My tongue's thick from the chili. It was spicy.
Felony acts.
Yeah, so, felony acts, right.
I mean, he has evidence.
Yeah, and that's probably a smidge of what the investigators and the other investigations have.
Yeah.
So it's all going to come to light. We just got a little cracks in the foundation, with this drop last night that let us know everything we thought would probably come with charges probably are still going to come.
Yeah.
Just the wording that he uses. I just don't think that he would be able to put that stuff in a legal document when you're talking about custody unless he could back it up.
Exactly.
You can't just throw out accusations somebody's a murderer or knows something about murder. So to me, that spoke to me.
Yeah. And basically her paperwork was everything that happened in the October order that's what she wanted reinstated.
Right. But she moved October 31st, several states away. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, like what Brandon's attorney said. So your ex-husband is shot at, almost killed. He was shot at, somebody tried to murder him. And instead of staying around and offering support for your kids, you just leave them. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense.
I think it makes sense if you think about it in a way that she probably knew it wasn't some stranger or a friend that had a score to settle. If she knows she's with Alex and Alex took the shot, then she doesn't have a reason to be concerned about her kids because the potential killer is in the car with her driving her to Rexburg.
Very true. Very true. And she's the one who said in her statements, oh, yeah, me and Alex are very close.
Right. Yes, she did.
Very, very close.
And she kept him up from what we know now.
Yeah. So you're not going to tell me on that little U-Haul ride. He didn't tell her.
Didn't have some conversations.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting that they also brought up about Ian. He hasn't exercised his supervised visitation with his kids. He only did after it was brought up in this case in court that he hadn't seen his kids, even though he has the opportunity to.
Yeah, that's just red flag.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what about Melanie Gibbs? She popped up in that paper.
Yeah, she was supposed to testify. Melanie Gibbs says that Melanie Pulaski told her that 2 of her kids, I've seen different reports, but it says in these documents 2 of her kids were zombies and that Brandon was a zombie and he was part of Hitler's tight group of friends. Like, I mean, I watched the show Hunting Hitler.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, on the History Channel. And y'all watched it too, because I got y'all to watch it.
That's right. I remember that.
And
I wasn't convinced.
Well, I'm totally convinced. There's a new show coming on. But anyways, so Hitler's dead. And I guess, I don't know. I was like, what the world? Again, I guess, it's just a crazy stuff.
I sort of wonder if it's not kind of in relation to the past life thing. Where, was that maybe where she was going with that?
But, yeah, most definitely.
So Brandon just says as of right now, he doesn't know her involvement with the cult since Lori and Chad have been locked up, but he believes the cult in itself is still active, but the members are just being very cautious now because obviously they're under a lot of scrutiny and I'm sure the FBI is looking into things.
Yeah, under the microscope.
But one thing to add back when we were talking about the evidence, it says in there he has submitted significant and substantial evidence regarding her statements she had no knowledge in the attempt on his life, the denial of being in a cult, JJ and Tally's murders, and the other murders. Yeah. So significant and substantial.
It's huge.
I really wish the trial had kind of went on today. Yeah. Because we would have heard about this. But anyways.
Yeah, so the other stuff coming in was
this was what Melanie Gibb was going to testify to.
Yeah. Present evidence of Melanie Pulaski's excitement when she was told by Lori that Brandon had to die.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you confuse that.
You don't. When I was live tweeting this today, we had people who were talking about this, and it's law can seem really unfair sometimes, but if somebody says to me, hey, your husband, he really needs to die, and I'm like, oh, yes, he does. That's awesome. I can say that all day long, and that's not a crime. When you act on it, when you start to make plans for that person to die, then it becomes a crime. It's not a crime to be mean
Yeah.
or to be careless or whatever.
Yeah.
But then again, he has submitted substantial evidence. So that kind of, I think that was just sort of I think Melanie Gibb was going to testify to that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
Yep.
it just sort of supports whatever evidence he may have had.
Yeah.
That she knew about it at least.
Yeah. So it mentions that Ian and Melanie marrying after 2 weeks and implying it relates to her mental health issues. Yeah, they knew each other 2 weeks supposedly. I'm still not sure on the 2 week thing, but
no, it was around 2 weeks. I mean, as far as we know.
we know, yeah.
But Brandon, talks about Melanie, says she's LDS, but the LDS faith does not support marrying after that short of a time because you're sealed in the temple and that's a sacred thing and you need to be sure.
Yeah.
And so that was what Brandon also put in his documents, was that she just up and marries this dude.
Yeah. And I think one of his last statements he makes is Melanie Pulowski has told Lori's mother that the kids will know the truth, and he thinks that Melanie may try to brainwash the kids. That's a legitimate concern.
Definitely. And, the thing about all this is once we get to where we talk about what they agreed on today, and we'll just hop in right now with Melanie's statements because
there are very few.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare Brandon's, his was a novel, hers is kind of like the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
So it was just they did not get the psychology report apparently until late last night, like 11 p.m.
11:30, I think he said.
But she filed a supplemental statement after reading the psychologist report, which said that I was surprised by that she was I don't want to say the more normal of the two, but that she didn't have any mental health issues. And apparently what was said by one of the lawyers was that Brandon showed more concerning behavior as far as being, I guess, deceptive in his answers. But so she filed some supplement in there.
Okay, I'm just going to say, I would be guarded.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm shot at. I'm going through all this stuff. I see, is it his niece? Yeah. No, cousins.
Yeah.
It would have been his, first cousins or whatever. I don't know. Is that first cousins?
I don't know.
No. Anyways, cousin-in-laws or whatever. I mean,
yeah,
he's seen what happened to JJ and Tylee and
course.
Charles and, all that. Okay, I would be a little guarded.
Yeah, I mean, even if you take, because at this point, we didn't find the kids till, what was it, June? Yeah, Chad was arrested in June. So up until then, you just got missing kids. And then after that, you got confirmation she's been hanging with murderers.
Yeah. Here's all the evidence I need that Brandon needs to keep the kids. They're alive.
Exactly.
They're surviving. They're in school. They're, doing whatever. They're safe.
He's remarried.
Yeah, they're alive.
So they have a unit now that's stable. So Melanie just wanted the legal joint decision making and the regular parenting time that they agreed to at the end of their divorce in October of 2019 to be reinstated.
Yep. She asked for makeup time with the kids because she hasn't seen them in, I think he said 13 months.
Yeah, it was 13. Yep.
Yep. She seeks an additional 1 week uninterrupted vacation time in addition to regular parenting time and holidays and birthdays.
Yeah. And it said that she had historically been an involved parent, except for the point where she ditches her kids and goes to Rexburg.
Yeah.
But she also put in her paper she had concerns that Brandon moved the kids from their home and their school. But, I mean, he was shot at. And she's in a cult and she's gone. So what was agreed to today?
So basically, she got what she wanted.
She did.
Basically today, and when it came down, when you text me that, I'm like, because guys, I'm going out of town this weekend, and so I'm trying to help my mom get her Christmas decorations set up. So I've been like busy, but so you're texting me on and off. And when you text that, I was like, what?
I know. You called me immediately.
Yeah. I was like, what the world?
And I think the thing to remember is this, okay? If you remember several times when Brandon was on the stand, they talk about charges for her potentially. So this doctor's report, in the end, the doctor recommended that Melanie be allowed equal time with the kids, and they kind of step it to where she starts off with supervised here in the beginning for a few hours and then eventually goes to overnights and that kind of thing. So back to where they started.
Yeah.
But I think the thing to remember is that Brandon didn't put all this stuff in affidavits. Brandon is not going to let the fact that she deserted her kids and then was later arrested for being very threatening. If you listen to his dad on the phone, he's terrified.
Yeah.
I kind of think maybe this is my theory, and we talked about it after all this stuff. Okay, I'm just going to throw my theory out there. I think maybe an arrest is coming way sooner than later.
Yeah, because this visitation starts this Friday.
And here's, I think actually it says, I have December 5th on here.
Supervised visits start on 11/20 at 9 a.m.
So
But it's supervised.
Right. And that's okay. But I mean, it's not okay. She's going to get to see him in my book. However, my theory is maybe you're looking at having Melanie Gibb, who we think is the star witness for Lori and Chad's case, come testify. I don't know if it's a situation where Brandon and his attorney knows an arrest is just imminent. So why drag this into a 2-day fight? It's money, it's time, it's emotional.
Yep.
If he agrees to everything right now and she never makes unsupervised visitation, let's just say unsupervised. Supervised, okay, she gets to see him. But what if they know she's going to be arrested before unsupervised starts and they just agree right now to save time and money and emotion, and maybe they don't want Melanie Gibb up there testifying at all? What if they don't want things to come out in this trial that may compromise something with the other investigations?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that could happen. And he states that, and we have it somewhere in here, it's Melanie's attorneys are questioning him about, well, you agreed for the joint, da-da-da-da-da. And he says, he talks about the charges coming.
Yeah, and he does. He said, so essentially what the doctor concluded is if there are no charges in this case, she should be allowed to have her visitation back. And a lot of people on Twitter were like, why would that doctor do this? Well, this doctor cannot make a ruling based on potential charges or at this point, what really we know to be true, but a court of law is going to consider rumor that she was in a cult and she knew something about these kids.
Yeah.
This doctor doesn't have any proof of any of it yet.
Yeah.
She can't even bring that into consideration. Melanie's been upgraded from a person of interest to, what was it called?
Investigative lead.
Which, according to Melanie, one of the last things she testified to on the stand today was that there's not a difference in those terms. But I don't think the doctor can say, well, she might, get arrested.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and just deny her everything. You can't do that.
Yeah. So I don't think Brandon would have ever agreed to any of that if he didn't know what was coming.
Exactly.
He wouldn't have fought that long for his kids.
I agree. And all the money and all the motions and the delays, if he was just going to give in and give it back to her, no way.
Nope.
This would have been resolved without stepping back into the courtroom.
No. And if you listen to him, I don't know if any of you guys listen, but if you listen to him on the stand, he was very adamant. Like when he was being cross-examined,
yes,
he would be like, I do not agree with that statement.
Right.
I did not say that.
Because at one point, her lawyer says, wait, but they haven't charged her. And you're saying if they charge her, and right now we have no charges.
Yeah.
So it was just, I think, Brandon's way of not silently, but just in a roundabout way, letting the judge know we got charges coming.
Yep.
And it's, like you say, this Friday starts it. And then it's in December when she actually gets a little more freedom with her kids. So they have until like the middle of December to charge her if that's where they're going. It's just a theory right now.
Yeah, because I think these are like once a week visits or something. It's like every Friday or something.
Yeah, supervised for a few hours. Brandon has to pay for the supervisor because right now that was just part of the agreement that they made. It's not in the October order, but if Brandon wants a supervisor there, he was responsible for paying for it.
Yeah.
So somebody had asked me about that. I want to say real quick, Hayden McHale on Twitter, she wanted a shout out last time, and I got to run in my mouth and forgot to say
old.
hi.
You're forgetful.
Thank you. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
I'm so forgetful.
Yep.
She'll be restored to full visitation in January. I just double checked.
Yep.
So this is just this stuff until January. It's just sort of easing the kids back in. They're small. So they may see pictures of their mom or whatever, but they've had no contact for 13 months. And when you're talking about a toddler, and I think she does have, a kid that's maybe 2 or 3, even the smaller kids, there are going to be gaps there.
Yeah. Hey, one thing it brought out that we do know she had the baby.
She did.
2 months ago. So it had been September, middle of September.
Yep. About the time that we put it out there. But yeah, she did. A lot of people have said, well, do we actually know she was pregnant? Unless an alien was going to pop out of her belly and dance around. I hope so. So we know today. Yes, 2 months old.
Another thing they brought up in that, I was like, what? She has over $150,000 in lawyer fees.
That's what she says. But
yeah.
And then she's talking about, well, my debt to asset ratio, I have more debt than asset. And I'm kind of like, hey, welcome to the real world,
exactly.
baby. You're
That's
lawyer.
where we are.
You're not married to a guy who's super financial stable like the one you left. So your debt's going to be outweighing those assets. And welcome to the real world.
Yeah. Hello. Us little people down here.
Brandon was paying the insurance premiums. They went through all that. There was a lot of talk about money where Brandon's selling the marital home. He was supposed to have gotten a check for $6,291 and was supposed to split that with Melanie. She hasn't, according to her, she hasn't received it. Then there was something about an interest in the Keystone business. He was supposed to pay her $3,250 by January 1st of this year. He did not, although they said he didn't get that, right?
Yeah, it was something about that. The finances got a little fuzzy, but I know she hadn't paid him anything towards like whatever.
It was preschool, I know was mentioned.
Yeah, she was supposed to pay. He paid 80%. She paid 20%, but she hasn't paid anything in 13 months.
Right.
So he was asking for
retroactive
child support. Yeah.
Now the other thing too is she still wants him to be held in contempt.
Yeah.
Which could be a monetary fine and jail time. So she sounds like Lori. Let's just go for the jugular. Let's not do what's best for the kids and throw their dad in jail over a little bit of money.
Yep.
She said that Brandon let some utilities that were in her name go into arrears and it went against her credit or whatever. She admits leaving Arizona to go to Idaho. She said it took her a day or two to drive up there.
This was really weird. She said, it took a day and a half probably. They left on October 31st. Then she said, we didn't get there till like November 3rd or 4th.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it didn't make sense.
I think it's 13 hours, right? Did we? I think
I think so.
I want to say it's like 13 hours.
I guess they stopped off at a lot of places.
Wow. Crazy. So they're resuming tomorrow morning at 8:30?
Was it? Oh, okay. I didn't catch the end there.
Yeah, it was. They're resuming in the morning. I think it's 8:30.
Now, the one thing that Brandon's lawyer really jumped on her about is the fact that she's not working. And she said, I might go back when the baby's in kindergarten. And the doctor, oh my gosh, y'all. The lawyer was like, but it's your choice. You're able-bodied. You have a trade or you have a skill or whatever. And he said, so you're just choosing not to go back. So in other words, what he's trying to put forth, in my opinion, is Brandon, for some reason, can't work right now, whatever that is, whether it's COVID or I don't know. But he totally let it be known, you're just choosing not to go back to work.
Yeah.
This baby's 2 months old, 6 weeks, typically, you're back to work.
Yeah.
So she's
got a husband who's working.
Exactly. Yeah, and she admitted that today. She
Yeah.
said she's paid the attorney with credit cards and things. I don't know what things are.
Yeah, and savings. Yeah.
But she claims that she has only $20,000 left out of over $100,000.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's moved money around to pay for future criminal charges. I don't know.
That's what he said. She's moved a lot of money around.
Yeah, that was one thing that he.
That seems to be a I don't want to say requirement, but what these people in this little group does, right?
Yeah, definitely. Melanie brought up that the teachers at the kids' school were saying that Brandon wasn't bringing the kids there. Well, yeah, and I understand that because you had a bullet
Duh.
whiz by your head, and the people you know did it are still out there, and so yeah.
Yeah. Like I just can't. It just makes no sense.
They put in some text messages. At one point, this was from last year on Christmas Day, Brandon called and according to Melanie for an hour was telling her things she could and couldn't say to the kids. And then Melanie says here that Brandon tells her, I know you didn't have anything to do with the attempt on my life. Whether or not that actually was said is up for debate, I guess. But so at the end of the day, the judge, as far as the financials goes, he just said he was going to take that under advisement and issue a ruling at a later time. So, but custody-wise, they're back to where they were before anybody was arrested, which is they're working up to joint custody and joint decision-making. So we'll just see.
Yeah, I don't. And he did say it was one of the questions one of the attorneys threw at him. He agreed to it because there'll be a supervised visit. So
Yeah.
that just leads me to think before that she gets back into normal mode, that they're going to have charges.
Right. And I think the thing to remember too is, oh, there went my thought. Wait, what was I going to say, girl?
It's a ball bouncing around. I see it.
Oh man, what was I going to say?
There it goes. It's bouncing.
And you talking's just making it bounce further
I know,
away
right?
from me.
Him that thing up.
Well, what was I going to? It was something about like.
It was a smart big. This was like the most
awesome point that I could have made the whole podcast. So it just flew away.
Yeah.
Well, I think the big thing is that we're not finished with Melanie. And I felt like the way Brandon was wording his testimony about potential charges is sort of telling all of us, it's coming.
Don't panic.
They're coming.
Yeah.
I would say maybe before January.
I mean, looking at this case, there's no judge in his right mind going to agree and put a kid in harm's way with what we've seen through this case.
I know what I was going to say. The doctor that did the evaluation, now Brandon's attorney sort of made the point, we got this at 11 p.m. last night. We've been here since, 8:30 or whatever. We haven't had time to fully digest that report. But if you remember, Lori aced psychological evaluations.
Yep.
And they had her pegged as normal back even when, Tylee was little and she was in this fight with Joe Ryan.
That's early 2000s.
It's not a stretch to say that maybe Melanie could charm this doctor and show for an hour or two sitting in a chair that she cares about her kids.
Yep.
I don't think a mother can care about their kids and leave them like she did. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I don't like it when my kids spend the night somewhere. I just like my kids to be home where I know they're safe. And that's not, always going to happen now that I have teenagers, but I could never dream of moving to another state without my babies.
Yeah.
It just would never be an option.
Well, their dad being shot at was very traumatic. Even if they didn't know what was going on, what transpired after that was very traumatic for them.
And if you think about it, if Melanie truly had no knowledge of it, and let's say, their marriage is over. However, you would think that Melanie would want to be there because she knows Brandon is stressed about this and he's traumatized. And being there for the kids and taking those kids off his hands every now and then is probably what a normal mother would do.
Yeah.
But the fact that she just left him with everything on his plate and for pretty small kids, I'm sorry, you're not a good mother.
I mean, he had friends of his that were more supportive and helped him than the mother of his kids.
Exactly.
I mean, these people were hiding them in their houses.
At their own risk. Yeah. Because at this point, Alex is alive and well.
Yep.
So I think that was kind of everything that went on today, sort of summed up.
Yeah. I think it's very telling. I think it's telling. Don't panic.
Right.
It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are going to be fine.
There's just no way Brandon would have just went out in the hall, and they literally said in the hall. I mean, usually they have little rooms you go in with your attorney, and then the other party has their attorney, and they go back and forth. But I just don't think there's any way. And somebody said, does she have something on Brandon he didn't want out there? I just don't think he's willing to risk his kid's safety to save face about anything.
No.
I don't think that's a possibility at all. I think Brandon knows what's up legally and saved himself, 2 full days of trial with witnesses and cross-examination and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he agreed because he knows it's never going to go off.
Yeah. You remember, guys, he's the one who identified JJ's body.
Exactly.
I mean, he's seen it firsthand.
That's such a good point.
He does not want to see his kids go through that. So
such a good point. I didn't even think about that, but he's invested.
Yep.
And we like Brandon. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure Brandon wasn't perfect at some point, but I mean, you're comparing apples to oranges between the two of them.
Yeah, his kids are alive.
Yeah, and he's done a very good job of making sure they're as safe as they can be, being connected to this crazy family.
Yeah.
So that's it. Fruit Loop is heading out of town Friday, like she said.
Yeah, and something's going to drop big.
Something's going to drop big next week. So
I'm going to be near. I'm going to be 4.5 hours from Phoenix.
Wow. You should go out there and there won't be nothing going on. But so if something were to come down while she's gone, we'll just have to do a podcast when she gets back.
Yeah, unless we figure something else out.
But I'll be tweeting if anything were to happen. I just feel like that was sort of the big clue today.
Yeah.
Is that she's not going to be unscathed.
Nope.
That was just the weight I got. So we will keep you updated. I will listen in tomorrow, although I thought they were done today.
Yeah, no, it said it's 8:30 in the morning.
Okay, well, maybe he's going to,
I don't know.
Make a decision tonight. Maybe there's other stuff that needs to be testified about, but I heard him say he was going to take it under advisement, so we'll see.
Yep.
All right, guys, we are out of here. I will talk to you guys on Twitter while she's gone. We'll keep that updated for you, and thanks for listening.
Good night.